we're going to talk about the Ontario Student Assistance Program.
Can you tell me about it? What is the Ontario Student Assistance Program?
So we call it OSAP for short. So Ontario Student Assistance Program is OSAP. And what it is funds to help students go to university or college because the government doesn't want funding to be a reason why students don't continue to pursue an education.
Okay, and what kind of funding can I get?
So for school, there's usually tuition fees, there's book fees, there's school fees, there's probably living expenses. So all of those that go towards your education, those can be covered.
Okay, and like this, do I have to pay this back, or is it like, a funding that I can keep?
So that's a very good question. So OSAP breaks it down into grants and also loans. So for grants, that's publicly funded money that you do not have to pay back based on your individual financial situation, your family financial situation, and they calculate that for you. A loan is publicly funded money that you do have to pay back. So if you are good at budgeting, then maybe you only spent the money that was grant that you don't have to pay back. But say you did use some of the loan, then the loan you do have to pay back.
Okay, and to clarify, a grant is money that I can keep, that I can use towards, my school fees, and then a loan is money that I have to pay back to the government.
Yes, that is correct.
With this funding, why should I apply for it?
Like I mentioned, there's money that you don't have to pay back. So for example, when you apply for OSAP, you will be based on your individual situation. There's grants. Sometimes you can apply for bursaries that you don't have to pay back. But of course, the loan, if you do take part of the loan, then those are money that you do have to pay back. But opening and applying for OSAP opens other opportunities for funding that you may not have to pay back.
Okay. And how do I know if I'm eligible to apply for OSAP?
So based on your immigration status, for example, you're a Canadian citizen, you're a permanent resident, or you're a protected person, and there's some additional other factors other than your immigration status that would determine whether you are eligible. For example, you have to meet the academic requirements. You need to not have enough financial resources. For example, based on your individual situation and your family situation, that if there's not enough money to pay for tuition or the education, then they would consider that. They also have to look at if you ever, for example, owe the government money. So say you never paid back money that you owe the government, maybe they paid you too much or they told you this is what you owe, like after filing taxes. If you didn't pay it back, so not good credit history, then that could be a determining factor why they would not approve an OSAP application. You also can't have filed for bankruptcy. And also, depending on your situation, so say student loan funding is based on weeks of funding. So 340 weeks is like a lifetime limit if you were doing education. You can go up to 400 weeks if it's doctoral studies, and you can do 520 weeks if you are a student with disabilities. And to be eligible, you must live in Ontario, because as the program suggests, Ontario Student Assistance Program. And if you are an international student, you would not be eligible.
Okay. And for example, if I am a student from another province, but I will be attending post-secondary in Ontario, will I be eligible to apply?
So based on your situation. So say you meet the other criteria, you're like the citizen, a permanent resident, or a protected person. Say I move from BC to Ontario so that I can do my Bachelor of Studies at a university. Then if I'm living in Ontario, then I can apply for the Ontario Student Assistance Program. If, say, I'm in BC, but I'm doing online studies, I did not move to Ontario, then I would not be applying for the Ontario Student Assistance Program.
Okay. And how do I know how much funding I would get?
So based on your educational costs, like for example, you might have to pay for books, tuition, living expenses. So based on that, they would determine what you're entitled. And also they look at your individual situation. For example, do you have parents? Are you dependent on them? So they would look at your parents' income. Or what if I am independent of my parents? So maybe I got married already, so I'm no longer dependent on my parents. I am an individual with a spouse. Then they would look at my spouse and my income. And then maybe I got scholarships or bursaries. So they would also look at other money that will help to pay for tuition. So all of that is factored into what I might be entitled from OSAP program.
Okay, and what if I cannot show them, or what if, my parents or my spouse is not supporting my education? What do I do?
So when you file for the OSAP, you have documents they request, right? So say you moved out from your parents, maybe your relationship is strained, you're not dependent on them, then they would look at your individual income situation versus maybe including your parents. But those are things that the OSAP program would look at specifically case by case.
Okay. And I'm guessing it's like a similar situation with the spouse as well?
Well, I guess it would depend on if your spouse is, are they still your spouse? Like say if your marital status changed, then they would look at you maybe as an individual, or if you are still married, but maybe there's some other issues or things going on that maybe the spouse might not support you financially, then they would look at that case by case as well.
Okay. And what is the application process like? How do I apply?
Okay, so what we can do is go on the Ontario Student Assistance Program website. So say it's the first time I've ever applied, then I can register as a new user. Before I register, I should prepare my social insurance number, some personal information, and if I want, I can also include my Ontario education number. But that's not required. So after I register, it will ask me, for example, where am I going to study, and it will randomly generate an OAN number for you. So that's your individual number for OSAP, and then it will use that to tie you for your application based on your SIN number. So after we do that, say I selected a program, maybe college or university, then basically I would apply for those individual schools for OSAP. Say I already accepted a program, then I only need to apply for that one school, since the other schools will not be relevant. But if I'm not sure which school I want to pick yet, I can apply to OSAP for all the schools. And then when I apply, of course, I will need my information about my school and program. Is it 2 years, 4 years? I will also need my tax information, or my parents' tax information, or my spouse's tax information, as well as their social insurance number. So that is how they calculate, for example, what my entitlement would be based on my family and financial situation. So after doing all that, then I can select, for example, part-time studies or full-time studies. So of course, part-time and full-time studies will have a different price and cost. So that will determine how much you would be eligible for OSAP. And then based on other factors, for example, maybe you are a student with a disability, then you might be entitled a bit more support just because the cost of education might be higher because of your individual situation. So you just have to provide documents that show that. And after doing all the information about myself, my family, then I can submit the application, and then that part would be completed. That would be how I apply for OSAP. And then based on what program, say I'm doing full-time studies at a university, so that would be based on a 4-year calculation, then they determine how much money I might be able to keep, how much money I have to pay back, and then the total amount that I would be approved for OSAP. So if of course I'm doing college, the program might be 2 years, then the amount of funding they approve might be less because the cost of education will be not as much money.
Okay. And for this funding, is it only for students coming out of high school, or can I apply if I haven't been in school for a couple of years?
So anyone who's going to pursue college or university would be entitled to apply as long as you meet the eligibility criteria. So that's the immigration status and the other factors.
Okay. And so, after I apply for OSAP and I go to school, complete my post-secondary education.
Yep.
How do I know when it's time to pay back the loans?
So in addition to registering for OSAP, you also register with the National Student Loan Service Center. So that would be, say I studied in BC and then I moved to Ontario to also study, then they would have records of how much money I might owe for education. So say maybe I did a bachelor and then I pursued a master's. So once I stop studying, that is when they will help me calculate what amount of money I need to pay back. And based on your individual situation, they can make arrangements with you. Say you just graduated, you haven't found work yet, it's very tough for you to make payments. Within the first 6 months, they don't require you to do the first payment, but they could start charging you interest. So based on that, if you have individual hardship, then you can review with them, apply to do 0 interest or maybe a reduced interest for those 6 months. But they will look at your individual situation, and you actually have to reapply every 6 months if you need special accommodations for the payments.
Okay, so if I am not able to, make the monthly payments, then I would have to contact them to set up a repayment schedule that is accommodating my situation.
Yes, so you can apply because they want you to be able to repay the loan based on what you are able to do. So based on your individual and family financial situation and maybe some other factors that might have happened, so they would assess your situation.
Okay, and so if how do I apply to the National Student Loan Center?
Okay, so what we can do is go to the website, the National Student Loan Service Center. So you can apply a few different ways, like you can open a brand new account with them, or maybe you made a My Service account with the Canada Revenue Agency, for example, then you can use that login information. You can also, if you have an online banking account, you can also connect that to the National Student Loan Center. So that is just so they recognize you as an individual based on your social insurance number, so they know how much you owe them. So basically, if you have your SIN card number or your banking information, or you can create a brand new account, that is a way to create an account so that they know how much you were approved, how much you have to pay, and when you have to start paying.
Okay. And so this process, this applying for OSAP, how long after I submit an application will I know, when will I receive my funding, how much will I receive?
So if you submit your application with all the supporting documents, within 3 to 6 weeks, they would approve or tell you what your status of your application is, and if you are approved, or basically if maybe you're missing things, then they would let you know.
Okay, and how do I know what documents I'm missing?
So on the online OSAP portal, it will tell you, for example, you need your personal profile, you need maybe tax information for yourself, for your parents. Basically, it wants to know about you as an individual and your financial situation, so they can assess how much money you're entitled and how much they might approve for you.
Okay, and if, say, during the application process, I were to change my contact information or my address, what do I do?
So basically, say you change your phone number, your email address, your home address, it's important to let them know as soon as possible, because they use that information to update you on the status of your application, if they require more documents. So it's important to let them know as soon as possible, and you can update it online on your own online profile.
Okay. And if I want to know more about, the application process, and, maybe some financial accommodations, where can I go?
So say you need support for OSAP, then you would go to their online website, or you can call their service center. If you need help with the National Student Loan Service Center, then you can go to their website or call their service. If you don't know where to start, you can start at your school's financial aid office, and they can direct you in the right direction, because these are related to school, so they can at least help point you in the right direction.
Well, thank you, Amy, so much for all this information. I did certainly learn a lot about OSAP today, and now I feel a lot more prepared to start my OSAP application.
All right, I'm glad the information you find helpful. All right, thank you.
Thank you.